everybody. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I am so excited that you're all here. I'm Eve Bloomgarden. I'm a board-certified endocrinologist and the Chief Development Officer of Women in Medicine nonprofit organization. And welcome to the first event of 2024 for Women in Medicine. So it is a really big deal. I know. We are very excited to share this moment with you. We're really excited that we're finally here, and we're going to have a conversation together about reshaping the U.S. healthcare landscape. And, you know, like most things, it takes a village to do the work that we do. And that's why we're grateful to see you all here. And I want to just do a quick thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to Tinja Anderson with U Financial Group, LuluLemon, Angie Moore from Detox Products, and we're just grateful to have all of you. Before we get into the meat of today's talk, I would like to welcome Congressman Krishnamurthy to say a few words and join me on stage.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, great. Hey, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, great. It's wonderful to be with you. It's nice to be someplace they can pronounce my name correctly. This is a true story. When I first ran for office in Illinois, I said, "Hi, my name is Raja Krishnamurthy." And the person looking right back at me said, "Roger Christian Murphy. Very nice to meet you." They said, I didn't know the Irish made it to India. In any case, I want to observe those 3 rules of public speaking today. Be short, be sweet, and be gone. So 3 points. First of all, can you give a big round of applause to Shika and all the organizers of today's event? I've known the Janes, their parents, also for a long time, and they're just fantastic people. And all the people behind this organization are really terrific and some of the best educated people you're ever going to meet. I have to confess that when we received the meeting invite and were told to come to the LuluLemon, we weren't really sure if we were going to the right place. And but this is a really nice meeting space. And so thank you to LuluLemon and the sponsors. The second point I want to make is Happy National Women Physicians Day. Today is it. I happen to know some of these women. My wife is one of them. She's an anesthesiologist, and the joke is that we both put people to sleep. So have a little bit extra caffeine right about now. But in all seriousness, women physicians have to do it all. You know it. You have to obviously take care of your patients, run a business. Usually you're the owners of your practice. You're also taking care of your families, and you're taking care of our communities. And so hats off to you. And quite frankly, every day is National Women Physicians Day in my heart. And so I just want to salute all of you for what you do. The third and final point is I'm so glad that you're meeting today to talk about all the different issues that affect women physicians, but also women in society. And we have to make sure, as Shika mentioned to me earlier, that obviously this year, being 2024, we're going to talk a lot about reproductive freedom. And I'm a very strong supporter of reproductive freedom. How about you? Yeah. This is foundational if we really are intent on the idea that men and women should be treated equally, that we actually uphold that principle in our law by making sure that we have reproductive freedom. And that is under attack, as you know. But the issues go beyond reproductive freedom. As we discussed earlier, we're talking about issues of, making sure that women can actually survive and thrive in the workplace, all workplaces, including in hospitals and physician settings. We make sure that we take into account women's perspectives from the standpoint of treatment, whether it's in oncology or in other areas. And of course, we do everything we can to make sure that every day you have a seat at the table. There's this old saying in Washington, D.C., which is, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're on the menu. And we have to make sure that women are not on the menu in Washington, D.C. And so I'll just leave you with this, which is I want you in this election year to do 3 things. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent. I want you to do these 3 things. 1, we have to vote. Are you with me?
Yes.
Yes.
Pulling up that proverbial seat to the table means that you vote. The second thing is you work on not only causes that I'm sure that you're going to be talking about today, but also on causes of public policy that are bigger than any one individual. And so I hope that you will advocate for those public policy issues in Washington, D.C., Springfield, and in other places. And then the final point is it's time to run for office. It's time to run for office. Again, it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, independent, but if you're a women physician or any kind of women provider, you might think about running for office on top of taking care of your patients, on top of taking care of your families. But it's so important. And so it doesn't matter what level of government it is. It could be city council, it could be state Senate or state house, it could even be Congress, although please not in my congressional district. But anywhere else we'll be so happy. And in any case, I just want to salute you on meeting today, on bringing together a group of people who are concerned about the future of our country from all perspectives, including women's perspective. So thank you so much, and thank you for having me. Thank you. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, what a pleasure to hear the humor and the seriousness combined in a way that really resonates with all of us. And thank you for being here and supporting us. It means a lot. So we're very grateful. I'm also going to say that I was going to say that line exactly, which is if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, and it just sounds better. Like that was so I love it. Okay. So, as we continue to address the gender gap, it's equally important for us to empower physicians to confidently and confidentially, manage their finances, recognizing that financial literacy is a crucial skill for physicians, especially those in leadership. It's important that women in medicine are equipped with the skills needed in all aspects of their careers, including financial management. Embracing open discussions about wealth management can further strengthen our position as leaders in whatever we choose to be leading in. And so today I'm thrilled to introduce Tinja Anderson, who will share some insights on how women in the medical profession can actively engage in and enhance their financial well-being. Welcome, Tinja.
Hi, welcome. Genuinely excited to be here. Awesome opportunity. Supporting organizations like this are so profound because the gender parity challenge transcends industries. So being able to equalize and accelerate what this looks like in every single industry really does make a huge impact, and the financial world literally impacts us all. And so for us, for those of you I haven't met, my name is Tinja Anderson. I am a financial planner. I'm a certified exit planning advisor as well. With me, I have Alex Adderman, one of the best planners in the country. We specialize in working with high net worth, high income earners, executives, and business owners in order to grow and preserve their wealth. Right? Very challenging to do in this environment. And I'm actually going to break down how our worlds overlap in just a second. So I always like to set the stage with giving you a context for how to listen, right? Maybe. So we all know who this guy is, Uncle Albert. Has anybody ever read his biography? You have, fantastic. So if you haven't read it, spoiler alert, he was a professor of mathematics at Princeton, and he was notorious for giving the same test semester after semester. And so as the story goes, he had a student the first semester, showed up for the second semester, same test. Goes up to Professor Einstein, says, "You've made a mistake." It's the exact same questions. To which Einstein responded, "No, son, not a mistake. This semester, the answers are changed. They're different." And is that not what we deal with every single day in our own lives, in our businesses, how we show up? This is exactly the questions that we have to be able to answer. How do I grow my wealth? How do I protect my income? How do I reduce my tax burden? How do I protect my family, my legacy? How do I afford the lifestyle I want in retirement? That also translates into business, right? How many business owners do I have in the room? You own your own practice, right? How do I get and keep my top talent? How do I figure out when I need to exit my business? What does that look like, right? How do I protect my top line, my bottom line? They're all the same questions, but how we respond to them changes, right? So when we're looking at it from a women's realities perspective, because we do have this gender gap that we have to deal with, what does that actually look like for us? Well, less than 40% are primary income earners. 51% of us control all the wealth. And I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Over $780 billion in investable assets. So we basically control the wealth. But 35% of us actually have any confidence in controlling our funds. That's a big gap. On top of that, in the workplace, and this is something that I'm sure you guys are talking about on the financial literacy side of things, is we make less. So the reality is that we live longer, we make less, but ultimately we control all the money. So why aren't we confident in how we invest our assets or controlling what we're doing? Well, for us, as financial planners, we look at it from a holistic perspective. It's not just about talking to your investment advisor or meeting with your CPA. You have to be able to look at the full spectrum of what I endearingly call your financial junk drawer. Okay? If it'll do its thing. Maybe. Well, there we go. So, I'm sure you guys love this one. So, prescription without diagnosis is malpractice. Same thing here. Shika said something yesterday that really resonates, and it's solving issues in silos does not create an optimal outcome, right? So looking at your finances in a silo does not create long-term wealth, right? It does not mitigate those risks over time because what worked 5 to 10 years ago might not be as advantageous now. So it's about understanding how do we look at this from a holistic, comprehensive perspective to project out your probability of success. And if you're not organizing that financial junk drawer, what risks are you leaving on the table, right? Yep, this is gonna be a fun one. So when we take a look at your finances, it truly is about having that conversation around what questions are we responding to? How do we respond to growing and protecting your wealth in the most cost-effective and tax-efficient way? And we do that through holistic financial planning. So genuinely excited to be a part of this because it affects everyone. And it's not just a healthcare gender equity challenge, it transcends industries. So thank you for the opportunity. Would love to chat.
Thank you, Tinja. That was actually very insightful, helpful, practical, and we really appreciate you being here. And okay, I'm going to just go off script here for a second because it is my distinct honor to invite Dr. Shika Jain to the stage here. Now, she doesn't need an introduction, and I'm not going to give you the 7-page long one that I could because, that would be boring and it's too long and it's everywhere recorded. But Shika Jain, MD, or Dr. Jain, is one of the most fabulous people that I have truly ever met. She is the founder and CEO of Women in Medicine. She is the idea behind all of this. And when I first met her, I told her I'm hitching my cart my cart to your star, and I'm going to follow you all the way. And here we are today. So please, let's welcome Dr. Jain to the stage.
Hi, everybody. So welcome to our first event of 2024. To say that I am excited would be an understatement. Can we please first just get a huge round of applause to everybody who went into the planning of this event? So I could stand up here and talk to you about women in medicine for the next 8 hours, but I'm not going to do that because our panel is amazing and I want to get to that. But I want to just give you a little bit of a trek down memory lane with me about where we were and where we've come and where we're going. So I started Women in Medicine kind of out of out of necessity, to be perfectly honest. I started it because I started realizing that some of the barriers and challenges that I'd faced in my career weren't actually my fault. And the way I realized this was, I come from a very supportive home. I come from a really lovely place where my father's a physician. I knew what it meant to be a doctor, and I knew if I worked hard and I, did all the things, that I would be accepted in the field and I would excel and I would be great. And then I started facing barriers, and I thought they were my fault. Oh, you shouldn't get pregnant in fellowship because it's ruining your career. Oh, that's my fault. Sorry. Oh, you shouldn't be negotiating for your position because your husband makes money, right? I literally, in a job interview, had someone say, well, I'm not going to pay you for this amount of work because your husband has a job, and so you don't need to make that money. And I, being naive, I said, oh, yeah, my husband does have a job. But then I asked the next question, which the person was not comfortable with. Well, but if you're asking me to work extra, shouldn't I be compensated for it? And he said, but why? Because you don't need to make that money. Your husband is working. And I left that meeting and I thought to myself, holy cow, what am I doing wrong? I got pregnant with my twins, and a very nice gentleman who I respect came up to me, put his hands on my belly and said, what have you done? You've ruined your career. How did this happen? And I said, oh, let me tell you how this happened. And I started sharing these stories with women because we don't talk about these things. We've been told not to talk about these things. I started talking about these things with women, and they were like, oh my God, that happened to me. And I said, this is bonkers. How is this happening to so many successful women, and we're not talking about it? So I created the Women in Medicine Summit. In the first year, we had over 400 women and men in attendance. That was 2019. Fast forward to March of 2020. Well, COVID hit, and all of a sudden, I have Twitter messages, Facebook messages, DMs from everywhere you can imagine. Shika, what are you going to do? And I said, what do you mean, what am I going to do? And they said, well, the pandemic's here, and we need help. And I said, that's great. I'm taking care of my kids and my husband. I'm hoping we don't get sick. And they said, no, we need something to bring everyone together. You need to activate the network you created with the summit. And I was like, wait, I created a network? What are you talking about? So I thought back and I thought, wow, I met some amazing people in 2019, and we were going to have another summit. So let's start doing things. So what did we do? We launched webinars to create a safe space for women. We created a leadership accelerator for all of those women who felt like they were not progressing fast enough and they'd lost their support, the minimal support they had to accelerate their careers. So we created longitudinal leadership programming. We created a research lab. The reason we created a research lab was, one, because data needs to go out there showing the disparities exist and then showing the solutions. I'm very solutions-based. My dad's a surgeon. He says, don't come to me with a problem, come to me with a solution. So created a research lab to come up with solutions. And because my mantra has always been lift as you rise, we employed a lot of medical students to volunteer their very precious time so we could help them get published, help them get connected, and help elevate their careers. And many of them got opportunities to speak nationally because of their involvement in the research lab and with women in medicine. We launched the Women in Medicine Speakers Bureau. Why? Because I don't know if you remember, but there was a lot of Zoom meetings and a lot of Zoom presentations happening during the first 2 years of the pandemic. My husband jokes our bedroom became a makeshift TV studio, which is very true. I'd get him out of bed at 4 a.m. and say, please leave, I have to record something. And he lovingly left. But we were able to get women on the national and international stage because pre-pandemic, they were not able to speak. Because why? They had kids at home. I gave 100 times more lectures in the first 2 years of the pandemic than I did pre-pandemic because I had the flexibility of doing it from home. So we launched the Speakers Bureau to help elevate women. We launched allyship programming for men to help men be more inclusive leaders. And then I was on the phone with my dad, and he said, hey, Shika, so you've got a lot more stuff going on than the summit. Maybe you should create an organization. And my husband and I joke, that's how my autobiography will now be titled, How I Accidentally Started a Nonprofit. So that is how Women in Medicine started. Whoopsies. These are just some pictures of some of the amazing in-person events we've had over the years. And to say that we have created a movement would be an understatement. the women and men and people actually of all genders who've come up to me and said our programming has impacted them, our leadership lab has impacted them, our initiatives have impacted them, we've been involved in advocacy work. There's so many things that Women in Medicine has become, and I am so incredibly proud of our team, our volunteers, everybody who has gotten us to where we are today, many of whom are in the audience today, who we would not be here without the incredible hard work of so many women, men, and people of all genders being involved in this important initiative. So our next step in this organization is we are launching the Women in Medicine Auxiliary Council. And I could not be more excited about what the future brings with this Auxiliary Council, because we are at a point where things are changing rapidly in the healthcare space. And a big part of the reason I do what I do is not only because healthcare workforce equity is really important, but also because it directly impacts the health of our communities. It impacts women's health, it impacts men's health, it impacts transgender health, it impacts everyone. And for those with intersectional identities, like women of color, the disparities are even wider, whether it's in the workforce or from the patient side. And that is not okay. And by the time I retire, I want Women in Medicine to have a completely different purpose because we have fixed all these problems. So the Auxiliary Council is going to help us start that process. So the Auxiliary Council is going to bring together healthcare change makers from across the country. We're going to start with a really powerful group in Chicago, and we're expanding across the nation to plan events to get people to understand what is happening in the healthcare diaspora, whether it's in the workforce or whether it's amongst healthcare itself. We know there's been burnout and a hemorrhaging of women and really everyone from the healthcare space. We need to fix that, and we need to positively disrupt our healthcare systems. And I very firmly believe we are stronger together, which is why if you tweet or X anything out today, our hashtag is WIM, Stronger Together, because we can really move mountains and transform the healthcare landscape if we do this work together and outside of our silos. So this is a roadmap of events for the next year. And this is just a dabbling of things we're planning on doing. So we have this event today. We've got an event coming up in March, a panel in San Francisco. We have a Grey's Anatomy trivia night. Who here watches Grey's Anatomy still? It's my guilty pleasure. I can't watch it with my husband because he gets really mad that it's not as realistic, but some of those things are pretty realistic. And as you can see, we have some amazing events. We have an event here in May where we're going to be talking about maternal health. We're going to be talking about physician mom burnout, maternal wellness, parental leave. It's going to be a phenomenal event that's going to be taking place at the Langham in May. And as you can see, we have multiple events. And then in September, our pinnacle event, the Women in Medicine Summit, where all of this began, which we would love to see all of you there in September 13th and 14th at the Drake Hotel. And then we're going to close out the year with an event in Dallas and some really fun events like a karaoke night, because I don't know if you know, but a lot of women in medicine sing too. And then we had a really successful event at Kendra Scott, and they are amazing. You'll actually, when you leave, you'll be getting a little gift card from Kendra Scott. So please try to attend some of these events, or if you're interested in getting more involved, you can come talk to Amber in the back, talk to Dr. Bloomgarden, and you can also talk to the most important person I'm about to introduce you to. So this, huge round of applause for this lady, please. To say I am thrilled, I wish I had more adjectives I could throw out there about this woman and how excited I am to be introducing her as our president of the Auxiliary Council. I'm going to, again, just as Eve said, her bio is so long, I could talk about it for hours, but I'm going to just give you the abbreviated version. So Robin Jackson Malone, CEO and founder of RJ Communications. She is a boutique health, her company is a boutique health tech and wellness PR agency. She is a storyteller at heart. Before standing up her own agency in 2020, she spent her career in healthcare PR and communications, launching familiar healthcare brands and partnering with global powerhouses like Pfizer and P&G. Today, Robin and her tiny but mighty team work with a range of clients ranging from tech startups to large, well-established companies, using their experience in all things health to tell health stories and grow healthy brands. A native to New York, go New York. My brother lives there, so I love New York. Robin marries heart, head, and humanity to tell the stories that compel people to action, and we are so thrilled that she's coming on as our inaugural Auxiliary Council president. And with that, I will hand the microphone over to you.
Thank Thank you so much, Shika. Thank you, everyone, for coming out on a Saturday morning. This is such a great event. This is my inaugural Women in Medicine event. So this is sort of my coming out party, I guess. So Shika did a great job talking about me, but I'm not as important as why we're all here. I'll tell you a little bit about why I was so excited. I do a lot of work in healthcare, half for my whole career. What I loved about the mission for Women in Medicine, it doesn't just empower women, it enables them. And that's a really, really important distinction, right? We need the power, but we need access to the tools and the networks and the communities that actually propel women in medicine to lead like we know they should. Oh, up here, sorry. I got a big mouth, sorry. So this was what really got me excited about the Auxiliary Council and playing such a really, really important role. So I'm honored that Shika trusted me. Really, really excited to get to know all of you. We want more of you at our events, on our council. Please come find me. I want to talk to all of you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eve.
Okay, I'm so excited right now, and we haven't even gotten into the panel, which we're going to do in 1 second. So it is my distinct pleasure to welcome our moderator today, Dr. Garth Walker, who has also a very long CV, but I'll just give you a little taste of that. So Dr. Garth Walker is Chief Medical Officer at Rush Health, a healthcare executive and academic board-certified emergency physician with state, federal, and private sector experience. He's a recognized healthcare and public health thought leader and has been interviewed and quoted in every major news outlet and national news, local news, etc., such as MSNBC, Chicago Sun-Times, ABC. He contributes insights and expertise centered at the intersection of public health and healthcare delivery. I first met Garth when we decided around March 2020 to get together, including Dr. Walker, Dr. Jane. We're all interchanging, and we should maybe just commit to calling everyone by our professional titles. But we started a misinformation nonprofit organization dedicated to science communication and countering some of the noise out there about COVID. And since then, I think what we've seen Dr. Walker accomplish is pretty stellar as well. So come on up here, and thanks for being here.
How's everyone doing today? Awesome. Well, I'm going to start off with a quick story, and I know there's a trend of men dominating and talking about things when it's not related to them. So, but this is related to this topic. I know I've done a lot of amazing things over the past couple of years, but none of it would have been accomplished without women leaders. During the height of COVID, I worked with Dr. Ngozi Ezike. I had the good fortune of being exposed to and meeting Dr. Vinny Arora, and ultimately Dr. Jane, as well as Dr. Bloomberg, who have been incredible mentors for me and have played an incredible role in my career, from not just serving at the state level, but also serving at the federal level, and now here at Rush. And ultimately, I work for another amazing woman, Lisa Wagman, who's the president of Rush Health here in Chicago. And I can't talk more about the importance of safe space, allies, being able to carve out a space to be able to talk about difficult subjects. And this is one of the opportunities that we're going to have today. So I would like to welcome this rock star panel that we have today, and I got my notes just in case. But first I'd like to introduce Dr. Amanda Adeleye. There we go. She's a reproductive endocrinologist and obstetrician entrepreneur, recently at University of Chicago. Welcome to the stage. Dr. Annabelle Volgman, cardiologist, medical director of Rush Heart Center for Women. Dr. Erica Hinz, ObGyn fellowship director in complex family planning. And Dr. Regina Stein, a hematologist oncologist at Northwestern. Well, before we go deep into discussion, one of the most important things I think is being able to understand people's mission, their leadership, why they pursued this pathway. So if we could just go down the line and just tell us your story, tell us why you're here, and why what moves you going forward.
Well, first, thank you for having me today. I'm so excited to be a part of Women in Medicine. What moves me? So I'm an OBGYN by training and subspecialized in reproductive endocrinology and infertility. I got interested in OBGYN when I was a kid in the 90s. So the HIV/AIDS epidemic started in the 80s, but by the 90s, it had kind of transitioned towards an issue for developing countries as well. And what I noticed, I would go and I was a nerd, so I would read the newspaper. I'd go outside and get the newspaper in the morning. And I would see sometimes, what was happening with the HIV/AIDS epidemic and notice that a lot of women and children were being disproportionately affected. And that really troubled me, and I didn't know why. And it would take me years to understand that. But I feel like from a very early age, I recognized that women and women-identified people were being underserved globally. And that's something that I wanted to fix. And so I've always had a passion for caring for women and women-identified people. I waffled in medical school around should I get a PhD or an MD, but I love people. Not that PhDs don't. They do. But I know I wanted to be clinically facing. And, I left myself being very open in medical school to all the different specialties, but really OBGYN really spoke to me. I love to operate, I love to use my hands, and I love to help. And so that got me into OBGYN. And day 2 of my residency, I was on the labor floor, and I decided I did not totally love doing deliveries, which is a problem as an OBGYN. So I had to find something that was going to really work for me. And I had this wonderful mentor, Dr. Lisa Grossman, who was my chief resident at the time, and she was going into reproductive endocrinology and infertility. And I said, what is REI? Is that a store? I don't get it. I skipped that day when I was a medical student. But I found it, and it's a really amazing way. It's a real blend of cutting-edge science and helping people. And at the time, I thought a lot of happy stories, and there are also a lot of sad stories. But ultimately, it was a great blend for me of science and helping women and helping people decide how to build their families. And I really think that links a lot with actually complex family planning, which is something I'd also considered in residency, because I really do believe that we all deserve to have the family that we dream of. So that's my story.
Thank you. And thank you to Dr. Jane. And thank you for everybody being here. This is amazing. And that segue is perfect. Because can you all hear me?
Yeah, just pick up.
Okay. So I'm not sure if the mics work. I'll just speak very loud. So my name is Erica Hinz. I am an OBGYN by training and subspecialize in complex family planning. By way of hand, who knows what that is? Except for my work partner here. And I see someone else here. Yes, hello. So complex family planning is a 2-year fellowship after 4 years of OBGYN residency. We subspecialize in essentially helping people end pregnancies that they don't want to be pregnant for health reasons, for our various reasons. But I subspecialize in abortion, miscarriage care, and contraception care, specifically for folks who have medical or surgical complexity. And so you can imagine a lot of what I'm going to talk about today comes from my perspective and kind of the acute changes I've seen in my practice over the last 2 years. But my origin story was never, I didn't know what this fellowship was when I started my journey. My journey started as an engineer, actually. So I was also, I think all of us up here can rightfully say we're nerds of some sort of way. But it really stemmed from my own lived experience of gender discrimination in all of the fields and everything that I touched. And as I kind of progressed throughout medicine and the different rotations, I saw how women's health in general was really undervalued. And that drove me into OBGYN. And then even further, when I was deciding on a fellowship or not, I didn't have the words to describe it at the time, but this idea of reproductive justice, when to be pregnant, if, when, and how to have families in a safe and a sustainable community, really drove me. And I think complex family planning and REI are similar in that respect. We really just want to help women and families have agency and control over their lives and their health. And so that's what kind of drives me, and I'm excited to be here with you all today.
Good morning. I am Regina Stein. I am a hematologist oncologist. I'm at Northwestern. This is my 20th year as an oncologist, and I'm often asked, because people will say, I can't understand how you do what you do. You face such difficult diseases, and you have to deal with such difficult situations. I remember every time the face of a 72-year-old woman who, if you asked me, why did you decide to go into oncology, it was her. And she was dying, and I wanted to be by her side. I wanted to help her still have a quality of life. And I wasn't afraid of conversations of dying. And I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And specifically, I wanted to work in women's health. So I'm a breast cancer specialist. And this is my 20th year. I would say since I started medical school, the science, the innovations, what we have advanced in oncology, there has been over 30% reduction in cancer deaths since the 90s. And in breast cancer specifically, 42% reduction in annual deaths. We have come so far, and I am so glad to be a part of it.
So I'm Annabelle Santos Volgman. I say my middle name because people ask me all the time, are you Filipino? It's like, yes, I'm Filipino. And that's why I'm vertically challenged. Filipinos are the shortest people, one of the shortest people in the world. But that doesn't stop me from doing anything I want, because I grew up in an environment where women were the only ones who did everything. I went to an all-girls elementary school, high school, and college. And so when I went to medical school and realized that there were really smart men too, it was the first time I was discriminated against because I was a woman. I'm a cardiologist, and thanks to Regina and everybody's work in oncology, breast cancer is not the #1 killer of American women. It's heart disease. And we struggle to make women aware of that. They worry about their breast cancer, their risk of breast cancer, but they don't worry about that they could have a heart attack or heart failure or sudden cardiac death. And so when the American Heart Association came to me 22 years ago to try to increase the awareness about heart disease in women, that became my mission. And so I help Shika with her Women in Medicine, but my true passion is increasing awareness about heart disease in women and decreasing the risk of heart disease and stroke in women. My mom died of a stroke, and it really, she had a stroke, didn't die from it, but it ruined her life, and our family was never the same. And I try every day to decrease the risk of heart disease and stroke in women. Thank you.
Well, first of all, we're covering a lot of ground, a lot of specialties, a lot of hot topics, and a lot of very relevant topics. But one point that I do want to zero in on is there was a recent article about the increase in prevalence of cancer diagnosis among younger patients. Dr. Stein, if you could just speak to what are some of the implications for women, and what are you telling your patients in light of that trend, even despite the advances that are made in cancer?
In the breast cancer domain, even though it is still a diagnosis that mainly affects women who are over the age of 50, 12% of diagnoses happen below the age of 50. So the most important thing is awareness, early detection, mammograms, screening, and you can see across minorities the disparities of access. So making sure, and I have spoken all over Chicago on the west side, on the south side, really about increasing awareness and the importance of getting mammograms. But one of the very interesting things is the United States Preventative Task Force. They have a draft right now, And that draft says that women should start getting screenings for mammograms at age 40. But that draft has been implemented just as of May of last year, because up until May of last year, they didn't think women should have mammograms until 50. And if you have 12% of diagnoses happening below the age of 50, how does that make an impact? And we have multiple trials that show the impact of annual screening, the reduction in not just disease-free survival, but also in overall survival. Annual mammograms for women with average risks starting at 40, they work and they save lives.
Let's applaud that. Dr.
But on one more point.
No, please.
I asked a question, who came up with this age, the 50, and who's on this panel? And I learned that there's not a single breast radiologist on the panel because they didn't want to bias the panel. So the experts, right? Decisions need to be made by women, not for women. We need to make these decisions.
1,000%. In that vein, I think it brings up a phenomenal point around intersectionality, and we were talking about that recently. And we have phenomenal health equity experts here. Can you speak to, in terms of where the research is at and how is it informing your practice, Dr. Adeleye, as well as Dr. Hinz?
And you can call me Amanda. I trained on the West Coast, at least for fellowship, and it's very informal there. So I'm fine with Amanda as well. My last name's hard. I think, where are we in terms of our knowledge around healthcare disparities and closing the gap? I think there has been increased interest in healthcare disparities, particularly when they relate to race, but also in terms of gender. And that's great. I think I really love Dr. Jane's point. I want to meet her dad now. Don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions. And I really think that that's really the next step for us. Of course, as an OBGYN and as a person of color, close to my heart, it's going to be the disparities in Black maternal mortality. And it's a gap that has increased compared to Caucasian Americans over the last several years. And, I think in some studies it might just be defining that disparity, but I think in others we're starting to kind of crack the shell around this. It's not a mystery, right? This is a country in which we have systemic racism. We have systemic misogyny. We have systemic disparities for a number of issues. And I do think that, at least in my read of the literature, and I do focus particularly in women's health, we are starting to be able to be comfortable saying that these are some of the issues that have led to these disparities. But again, I want to meet this other Dr. Jane, because I agree it's about coming with solutions at this point.
Yeah, I second everything that Amanda said. I think we have to just say it out loud that it's racism, not race, that is the increase in maternal mortality. Like, that's just point blank. We just be real about it. Yeah. And so we have identified over numerous studies, like we're done measuring the disparities. It's been shown since the 1930s, since race was actually included in maternal mortality, that there's been this disparity, and it's been increasing and widening over the last 20, 30 years. So we're done measuring it. Let's, like we said, focus on solutions. So focusing on how do we decrease racism in healthcare is one big solution. I think the other thing that I think about from my perspective as someone who helps people surrounding pregnancy decision-making is focusing on state legislation and policies that are not restrictive, right? So there's a really great study published in 2021 that looks at states that are so-called restrictive states, where they restrict abortion access. And they have shown consistently that those states have worse maternal mortality outcomes. There's lots of theories. It's not a causal link. We don't know exactly how that happens, but theoretically, the thought process is if you're spending time and energy, money, resources on all of these restrictive policies, you're not thinking about proactive reproductive health policies. And so that's one potential link. And then we also have to think about pregnancy is a journey. It's not just you get pregnant and you deliver and then that's it, right? It's a whole, it shakes you to your core when you become a parent, for those of the parents that are out there. And so we have to think about not just the 6 weeks after, but the entire year plus after. How do we care for people and families after that and keep everyone as healthy as possible? So I think those are some of the things that I think about that are solutions focused when it comes specifically to maternal mortality.
I just want to add what we're doing in the field of cardiology, because cardiovascular diseases are the #1 cause of pregnancy-related mortality. And we have accepted that as something that we need to do something about in the cardiology field. So we are doing a lot of research. American Heart Association and the American Association of Black Cardiologists have really taken this on as one of our most important issues that we need to tackle. We are raising awareness. One of the most important things to do is raise awareness, not only with the physicians, but with the patients, that they should worry when their blood pressure is high, when they're pregnant. Anything above 140/90, or even actually less than that, they should go to the doctor and get treated. A lot of these women are not going to the doctor, and they don't feel that it's important. I can give you a case that really resonated with me just recently, with the change in the legislation in different states, with the reversal of Roe versus Wade, which is a huge problem for many of our patients. This woman developed, she's in her 30s, she developed peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is a heart failure disease that happens during pregnancy. And it's devastating. It can be very deadly. And especially if she gets pregnant again, it could kill her and her and the fetus, of course. And then who's going to take care of this child that she just delivered? And this happened to this woman. She thought she had her tubes ligated during her delivery, and she thought she was okay to have sex. And she didn't have her tubes tied. There was a miscommunication. She got pregnant. Her ejection fraction, which is still very low, which puts her at very high risk of dying with the second pregnancy. So if we were in a state that didn't allow termination of this pregnancy, she would have to carry this baby, and it would put her at risk. And she was desperate. She goes, I want to take care of my baby. I have him right now, and I want to be there for him. Please help me. And so we're lucky in Illinois that we can help her. It's taking a village to help this woman, because she doesn't have help with her child. So to even make appointments to get her echocardiogram done is a huge problem. So it just goes to show you how relevant these decisions are being made. I wish the congressman was here to hear these stories, because he could help us. I advocate through the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology. I'm involved with the American Medical Association, because they need to hear our voices. If we don't join these national organizations, they won't hear our voices, and we need to make that time. I'm lucky that my kids are older, and I can make time to volunteer now. I'm a grandmother, so my time is less. But I've done a lot since my kids have gone to college. So when you have the time, please volunteer your time to join these organizations that go to Washington, D.C. or Springfield to advocate for these bills. And when you get that email, please support this bill, or that we have to send to our congressmen and senators. Please do that. It takes less than a minute to do. You just have to email them, just have to write where you live, and your votes count. So please don't forget to vote. I love what the congressman said. Please vote. Remember, there were so many women who died to get our votes, and fought for that, and so many people don't vote. That really drives me crazy. So please go out there and vote and make a difference.
Okay. Dr. Volgman, you spoke about your ambition to increase awareness around heart health. And I know, as an ER physician, and my boss, Janine, is somewhere over there, when a woman comes in to our ER department for any type of chest issue, you really have to increase your radar. What are some of the messages that you're going across the nation sharing with women?
Actually, as a matter of fact, we just have, I'm on the scientific advisory board of the Women's Heart Alliance, which is to increase awareness about heart disease in women because women have been misdiagnosed, mistreated, and misinformed. So we were trying to raise awareness. We went on the radio in many different cities to raise awareness about this. We are asking women when they're having symptoms that are sudden and it's any sensation in the chest, they have to describe it as I'm having chest pain, because women use different words than men. When men feel anything, they go, I'm having pain. And that's, sorry, but that's the truth. My daughter is such a stoic. When she has severe pain and she'll go, oh, it just hurts a little bit. My son would be going, ow! They just want attention. And women don't want attention. So seriously, we're educating women to use the word, I'm having chest pain, I need an EKG, and I need you to check my troponins, which is a very sensitive test for heart attacks, because women don't present the same way and they don't use the words that will get them attention. So we were on a campaign just 2 days ago all over the United States telling women how to take care of themselves and to use the right words and demand that they get attention. Because in the emergency room, not at Rush, of course, when women present to the emergency room, they often get mistreated and misdiagnosed.
Thank you for that. I want to shift the topic a little bit to physician burnout. When I was working for the Surgeon General, that was one of the big advisory reports, and I had this huge advantage of talking to Dr. Jane, Dr. Aurora, about what are some of the real pressure points affecting the workforce. One of the big trends was that we saw it was very difficult for women to publish. We also saw there was a more negative rate with respect to promotion. And we're also in a space now where we are having more women in medical school outpace men. How do we stay committed to making sure that we have leadership that reflects the prevalence of women in the medical field? This is an open question for anybody to take.
I have some stats I want to share with you because I love stats, but another driver, I think, of burnout for me personally, but I think I can speak for a lot of us on the panel and other women physicians out there, is the gender gap in pay, right? We aren't paid the same. Not only are we not paid the same, but the outcomes, the way that we value women's health in a society can be seen just by looking at reimbursement codes. So for example, there's a study that looked at reimbursement codes for similar type procedures, a prostate biopsy and an endometrial biopsy. Same exact type of procedure, no difference in complexity, yet a prostate biopsy is reimbursed at 3 times the rate of an endometrial or a uterine biopsy, right? And so this is not about us as doctors making money. It's about how do we sustain women and physicians who want to take care of other women. There's a really great article by a bioethicist and a lawyer at Northwestern named Katie Watson, and she introduces this idea of double discrimination. And I think it's really important to think about that. So it's both women physicians who are taking care of women have kind of a double whammy against them. And so that discourages a lot of us to go into gynecologic surgery or procedural-based care because we're not getting paid for our time and we can't sustain a practice. And so it's a perpetual vicious cycle. So one is back to the point of if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. The people that make these codes, it's like a committee of 30 people, 2 of them are women. So we need to be at that table and we need to represent our importance and why we should value women's health. So that's one thing, like an actionable thing that I think we can do.
I'll chime in. I think that one of the issues is around this idea that power is limited, and in most leadership roles, they're often male dominated. And I think there's this unspoken concern that by having others in leadership that are not you, whatever you define you as, it's taking away, right? Like if we think about kind of the affirmative action decisions recently in the conversation, a lot of it has been posed as you're taking something away from me that I deserve. But I think we need to have a different lens when it comes to leadership. It's about a shared goal, whatever that goal might be. And I think, to your question, in academic leadership, often the department chairs are going to be men. Senior leadership are often men. At U Chicago, we're lucky to have Dr. Aurora, but in general, it's male dominated. And I think there's a lot of lip service around, oh yes, we love diversity. We really want to, equal, level the table. But it's hard to believe because at the end of the day, you have to put your money where your mouth is. And sometimes it is going to be shifting what that leadership table looks like. And people are afraid. So I think, and this is not a plan, but I really think that a organization like Women to Medicine really helps elevate that conversation. We have to make people feel uncomfortable. We have to continue to have stats and to point out this is not right and what are we going to do about it. And I think making people uncomfortable and recognize that there needs to be a change and recognizing that, perhaps as a male leader, you can be an ally and support and elevate other women would really, really change the field for our future female physicians.
I just want to chime in. Two things I want to point out. I am the Director of Research and Academic Affairs in the Division of Cardiology, which means that I promote people to professor or associate professor, and it's a thankless job. It's not a paid position. When I was asked to do it, they said, "I know that's unfortunate." They probably give me like $1,000 a year for a bonus to do this. And I do it because if I didn't do it, they would choose a male to do it. We have to say yes to these powers of position, these positions of power, because if we don't, we won't elevate the women that need to be elevated. And when I was put in this position, I encouraged both the men and the women to send me their CVs and see who needs to be promoted right away. And immediately we were able to promote 3 women right away and just as many men. But the important thing is we have to say yes. If you're asked to do this, please say yes because you have power to promote those behind you. And the other thing is, even if first of all, we should not accept 82% of what the men are being paid. But when we do get that money, I love that Tinja is here because once you make more money, and even if you're still making 82%, we're still making pretty good money as physicians. We need to learn how to invest that money. And I learned 30 years ago about the stock market, or more than that, 30 years ago when I learned about the stock market because everyone was talking about it and I didn't even know what a stock was. So it was embarrassing when my husband, who has an MBA, I said, "Honey, what is a stock anyway?" He goes, "Wait, you're 34 years old and you don't know what a stock is?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, I was learning to be a doctor." But then I was on maternity leave, so I learned all about the stock market and I realized I can make my money work while I'm investing it. Instead of just keeping it in the bank and earning no interest, because that's what your money is doing in the bank, it could go up 9 to 10% per year. And if you don't invest it now, so I invested 30 years ago, I can retire. I know I'm old, but I can retire, but I don't choose to because I like what I do. But I'm very comfortable because I learned about my money and how to invest it. So I encourage all the women, and my fellows don't know anything about money. And so I really try to help my fellows feel comfortable about investing their money and knowing what they're investing it in. Because a lot of times they'll say, "My husband does all of that." But yeah, it's really interesting that Tinja was showing that 61%, or what was the number? 65% of the women are investing their own finances. I don't think they're doctors. because they feel uncomfortable with money. We're not taught about finances in medicine, in medical school, and we need to be empowered to do that.
A woman. Oh.
Sorry, can I just add one more thing? So I think I forgot the second part of my point here. But I'm so glad that you brought up money. So money is power and power is power. And the reason I bring it up in terms of burnout is because when you are junior, when you're a trainee, when you are early in your career or mid-career and you're looking for assistance, you're looking for help, you've got children at home potentially, or you have a life outside of work that you want to spend time focusing on too, I feel like women are not listened to. And part of that is because of the leadership panel that we work with. Some men are great, but a lot of men just don't understand. And so I think having diversity in leadership increases access, and I think money increases access and ease of practice and all of that. So anyway, sorry, I forgot my last point, so thank you.
I think in the lay press, because there are a lot of articles that focus on physician burnout, and I think my non-physician friends will say it's what she does. Like, how can she not get burned out? But it's not that. I love taking care of patients. I thrive on it. It is what energizes me. It's everything else that is causing physician burnout that's not written about in the papers, that I think people don't understand. And when they come in to see physicians and, a physician might be having a bad day, they'll blame it on not what actually is happening.
I want to anchor on the notion of saying yes, because I do believe and I do agree with the notion of trying to make sure you're present and make sure you're represented. But oftentimes the structure just may not be conducive for that, especially for women. And everyone here has achieved some incredible milestones. If you could just share, how are you making it work? What is the environment? Has there been anything unique at your institution that has made it more possible for you to be able to achieve these milestones and make yes a little bit easier? The answer could be no, too.
I was going to say, I'm probably, I guess I'm mid-career now, which feels weird to say because I feel like I just graduated from fellowship, but
It's greater than 7 years after your fellowship.
okay, I'm not there yet. So 7 years, so I'm almost there. But going through the process of promotion right now, like I put for those that don't know, that in academic medicine, there's this whole ridiculous process that you have to put like a 70-page packet together of all of your accomplishments. That's essentially reworking your CV that already exists. And then a panel has to look at it and then promote you. And so I'm going through that process right now. And I think one of the big things that I'm really bad at is self-promotion. And I've been learning through Women in Medicine, through other mentors, hey, I'm doing a good job. Like I should promote myself more, and the women around me and the students below me, like lift while you rise. I think that's so important. I'm being more cautious about saying yes to things that will actually have an impact, because I used to just say yes to everything. And I agree 100%. That's what I started to do. But that was contributing to my sense of burnout. It's this vicious cycle. I say yes, and then I think I'm going to, get a publication out of it or a speaking engagement or something. And so now I'm really focused on, if I'm going to say yes to something, it's going to have a measurable, distinct impact, whether that's for me personally or for my mentees or for our patients. And I think that's been really helpful to kind of weed out some of the things that aren't really a good use of your time. So that's the only, I'm saying yes a lot still, but trying to be more selective about the yeses.
I want to come back to intersectionality because I really want to talk about health equity and things that are very specific, particularly to among the transgender population, Black women. There's been a lot of new state and federal policy put forth to focus on research as well as solutions at the local level. Amanda, would you be able to speak to some of those issues as well as Dr. Hinz?
Yeah, so I am very passionate about research, and I have a niche in transgender fertility care, and I'm also a woman of color in the fertility sector. So I think about intersectionality a lot, and my research focuses on that. But I think one issue I'd love to advocate for and see change is investment in this. I think research needs time, it needs money. And so, I think one of the kind of troubling things for me is that for women's health research, it is most often funded through the NIH CHD, the Eunice Shriver Child Health and Development Fund. And what that says to me is that women and women's research is valued in the context of how we might reproduce, how we might have kids. But listen, what about sexual health? That doesn't have to do with kids or pediatrics. What about uterine cancer? That doesn't have to do with kids or pediatrics. What about, I could think of 1,000 other things that are direct to women. And don't get me started on, it's very difficult to find a niche for LGBTQ plus care. And I think as a country, we have to put our money where our mouth is and say that this is something we care about. If we say that we care about closing the gap in Black maternal mortality, we have to put our money where our mouth is federally and locally. And so, and I echo what you said earlier. I mean, I think it's really important to also advocate in whatever specialty you're in. There's hopefully a political action committee that you can join, be on an email list. And sometimes it's as easy, again, as sending an email whenever you're asked to. I do that. It sounds like a lot of us on the panel do that. And I would really encourage you to do that, because otherwise nobody will speak up about the importance of financing research.
Terrence?
Can you repeat the question?
No, we were focused on intersectionality. What are some of the things specific to UIC, which is a leader in health equity, that you guys are thinking about in terms of delivering health care, as well as research topics that are moving the needle?
Yeah, I think just bringing people to the table and community engaged research is a really, really underutilized way of doing research. And so I think a lot of the folks that I work with are doing research. There's this really amazing group called the Melanated Midwives Group. So it's a group of midwives who are doing race concordant care, and they've shown better outcomes in prenatal and postpartum care. And they were able to actually get government funding for this, which is a huge, huge deal, because as we know, women's health research is really underfunded when compared to other types of research. Again, don't get me started on abortion care research, because I can't, as an abortion care provider, I can't apply for any federal funding because the federal government will not touch that. Yet we know that that research is so important to the larger picture of maternal health and mortality that we're aiming to fix. So I think specifically at UIC, what we're trying to do is interdisciplinary work, like Shika was saying, like, I don't know, I have a really corny joke. I'm going to just say it. But like, what do we get when the four of us are together? We have an REI, a complex family planner, an oncologist, and a cardiologist together. Like, you would never think in a million years all of us have something to talk about together, but we do. And when we get us together, it's magic. And a lot of these research projects that are happening are bringing interdisciplinary groups together. And I think that's where the key is. And then not just the academic types like us, but the community, the people that are most impacted have to be a part of that research design.
I think it comes down to education, and I think physicians have to be the educators. If you look at just disparities, and also actually take a step back, look at research. If you want to apply what we've learned, we should have good, diverse representation in our clinical trials, and we don't. So we're making decisions for Black women and decisions for Hispanic women when they only represent 4% of women who are studied in some of our clinical trials. If we want to make decisions on elderly women, well, a lot of the clinical trials back 15, 20 years ago, which we still use to make decisions, they cut off women at 70 because they weren't enrolled in clinical trials. So it just improving education and going to churches and speaking and making people understand, Black women have the highest mortality when it comes to breast cancer and are at risk for late diagnoses, and that impacts their lives. Hispanic women, I'm a Hispanic woman, there's lower incidence of breast cancer, but yet still higher mortalities. So we have to increase communication. We have to let Ashkenazic Jewish women know about the BRCA mutations and the incidences. And we need to have these conversations in the community, not just in a doctor's room. It's too late. It has to start earlier.
All right, so we have about 4 men here in the audience, but this is recorded. What have been good examples of allyship that you've seen from male leaders that have been able to successfully promote women, center women, and have a shared interest in their career? And this can be anybody.
I can tell you, I'm in a male-dominated field with cardiology having only less than 10% of women in the field of cardiology. I think it's 11% now. So you can imagine we deal with a lot of men. I was going to say the research is very important, and when we publish our findings, we need to make sure that there is a good female representative reviewing that, because a lot of times the reviewers are men of these papers. As a matter of fact, when we tried to publish our white paper on heart centers for women and why we need them. Circulation, I shouldn't have said that. I revealed the journal. Circulation rejected our paper because they said that there was not one male author in our paper. And we could have just sat back and said, okay, we'll take the rejection. But I said, no, we are not taking this rejection because of that one reviewer said something that was discriminatory. And so I went to my co-authors and said, who knows the editor of this journal? Because we need to complain. And, one of my co-authors knew the editor very well, and we really wrote a very strong letter saying that this is discrimination. This was not, we said we could give you 1,000 papers that have no women authors, and they've been accepted. So because
that could be a study too.
I'm sorry?
I said that could be a study too.
Yeah. Because the editor of the journal was what we call he for she, a woman supporter, he said, we sincerely apologize. We will change the policies. And he should have actually seen that reviewer and rejected that review. So I hope we made a difference in that journal, which is, one of the best. It is the best journal right now in cardiology. And we've seen changes. We now have many, many papers that have been accepted without one male author.
Thank you for that. And has anybody seen, Amanda?
Sorry. The question was any male allyship that we have. Yeah. Actually, and I hope this is not embarrassing, but Jan Kadievsky's in the room. I was actually in Jan's lab when I was in residency. And it meant a lot because, I think, so I went into a pretty competitive subspecialty, and having research is important, and having a good mentor is important. And Jan was incredibly kind with my terrible schedule and whatnot, and just such a great teacher. And, the work I did in his lab really helped me really be thoughtful about what I was thinking about in fellowship and how I treat patients. And Jan would be my male allyship example.
Examples showing up, of course. Another applause.
I think an important male ally also is your husband or your partner, because if you can have great partners in your work, but if you don't have it at home, it can really be a big problem. So I've been very fortunate that my husband is a huge supporter of my career. He wanted me to be a busy woman. He didn't want me to be sitting at home saying, when are you coming home? So he said, yeah, you should go into cardiology when I was in my residency. And so he's been a supportive husband from then on.
Amazing, amazing.
I'm going to give one more shout out to an ally, my partner in crime over here, Dr. Jonah Fleischer, who's also a complex family planning specialist. I think in our field and in my department, this is by no means how I say this. I am still searching for someone to mentor me that is a male ally, to be honest with you. I have colleagues that help support and do the hard work, but I'm still kind of searching for that person in my field and in the community. But again, I 100% agree with my husband's at home with the 2 kids, and he's often there doing what's traditionally thought of as the woman's job, and not asking for, a cookie for it, So I'm like, he supports me in what I do, and so does my work partner.
I will certainly say that my department chair has been a pleasure to work with. He's recognized schedules. When kids need to be dropped off at school, we've set the times where we start our clinics, and that's tremendous. He's an international scientist, clinician. We have about 30 clinical trials just in the breast cancer domain right now that are active, and he has allowed the women to take the roles as principal investigators for many of them. So for that, I applaud.
We talked about a bunch of topics, complex planning, awareness that is just not necessarily getting to the populations that we need to get to. Let's talk about the media's role, and how do we expect the media to be able to influence the success of all of this? I'll start with you, Dr. Volgman.
The media is incredibly important as our ally to promote whatever we want to promote. Shika is knows all about this. She's in the media a lot. So we partner with a lot of the media, whether it's newspaper, magazines, TV, radio. Good organizations should have a media person. It could be one of their hats, but you need to partner with media. Rush has been incredibly supportive of the Rush Heart Center for Women, and we're always in the media, especially in February, Heart Month. We're always being interviewed by ABC, public radio, public TV, and they can spread the word much more than even an event like this. You can spread the word through many different places. Social media can be a good thing and a bad thing. You can use it to broadcast whatever so it's free broadcasting of whatever you want to promote. So make sure that that is also something that you're doing if you want to promote something. So yeah, we use media all the time because it can be a great voice for your cause.
Awesome. And what about the topics that are typically forgotten or folks that don't necessarily have a space? Where do you see the role of media being able to champion those populations?
So with the Dobbs v. Jackson, which overturned Roe v. Wade, I don't think anybody thought, how does that affect women who have cancer? And if 41% of states now it's limiting access to abortions, that's about 3 million pregnancies in terms of who it's affecting. And to give numbers, about 1 in 1,000 pregnancies, a woman is going to have a cancer diagnosis. Nobody talks about that. 1 in 3,000, there's a breast cancer diagnosis. And those stories have not hit the media. And certainly nobody who was coming up with the legislation and overturning this ruling thought, well, what about the woman who is diagnosed with cancer and finds out that she's pregnant? How does that impact her? But yet you've seen some great media stories of that woman who had an infection and she was traveling, and there were things that were highlighted, and those little stories really resonate and they amplify, because one of the most tragic scenarios that I deal with is the woman who is diagnosed with cancer and she's early in her pregnancy. And how do we help that woman make decisions? And what if the decisions are taken away from her and taken away from us? So that's something that I think we could do a better job of increasing awareness and the implication of the change in the legislation.
I'm going to jump on here because I think you bring up some amazing points. I have a love-hate relationship with the media. I think one thing that's really important is that whenever journalist you're speaking to, and I've had a kind of crash course in media engagement over the last year and a half, been kind of thrown into the spotlight when I am not somebody who likes it, to talk about this because I'm seeing it every single day. Overnight, when half of this country lost access to make the most personal medical decisions on their own with their families, we saw just at UIC alone, so I work at both Planned Parenthood and at UIC, our out-of-state volume skyrocketed within 2 months, right? So I went from about 3% of my patients traveling from out of state to about 40%. Think about what that means. People are not getting essential basic healthcare in the communities where they live. They're having to take time off of work. They're having to get childcare, stay in a strange city with nobody that they know, and somehow come up with money for a procedure. They're coming to me now later in their pregnancy, sicker in their pregnancy. So many people are coming with chronic health conditions that are worsened by pregnancy. By the time they make it to us, they've been to 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 clinics and been rejected. And so we are having to get this mountain of multidisciplinary folks together with many of the subspecialties that are up here on this panel to safely care for them by the time they get to us. And that, while it's great, right now we have a lot of organizations and philanthropy that are helping to bridge the gap in funding. It's just not sustainable. Like, this is not going to work long term. And we're not really talking about that story in the media. I think we need to really just, like, the fundamental idea that you have to travel over 500 miles for a 3-minute procedure or someone to give you a pill is absurd. And we should be talking about that point blank in the media. Everyone should be talking about that. And also just knowing the facts. I think there's such a taboo to talk about any sort of reproductive health care, whether that's abortion, miscarriage, contraception, cancer screening, menopause. Like, we had a recent visit from our First Lady at UIC. Jill Biden was there to talk specifically about menopause. And it was amazing because that's something that women suffer all the time, and we don't talk about the treatments. We don't have to suffer. There's treatments about it. Let's talk about it. And so I think getting these topics out and aloud and talking about it in the media, but with our family, our communities, our friends, is so, so important. But I've been really careful in my engagement with the media because you have to just make sure they're giving the right facts to the wider audience.
I agree with that, and I agree with all of the points, and that media is really a double-edged sword. I think to the question of how to highlight minoritized people, I think, again, it goes back to diversifying leadership within media, and I have no media experience, so I know that that's a heavy lift, but I think that that would help. And believe it or not, I actually think that some federal actions, like having months dedicated to certain conditions, actually really helps. The fact that this is, Women's Heart Health Month, and you're wearing red, like, these things might seem small, but the media will come back and center on it. And I think when it comes to patient education or to people education about healthcare issues, we have to be reminded. If I was 22 and I, woke up at 10 a.m., which never happens, right, but I might miss, that ABC segment about, heart health. But if it's happening every single year, I will catch it one year, right? And so I think, again, showing our government that we value our healthcare, speaking up and having these months, like there's a PCOS Education Month, which is in October. There's a National Infertility Awareness Week, which is in April. If we have these sort of touch points, it might also help the media to remember, I want to make a story about that this year. So I think that the media can be incredibly helpful, but with the right information delivered in the right way with experts.
Can I just add? Shika is an expert at writing op-eds. We both went
turnaround
to.
too.
So we were fortunate at Rush, when she was at Rush, to be in the op-ed class together, and it was an amazing learning experience for both of us. There's a project called Op-Ed Project, which was started by 2 women because most opinions in magazines and scientific journals and newspapers were written by men. 85% of them are written by men. And what was shocking was the reason why 85% of them are written by men is because 85% are submitted by men. And so their goal was to increase the number of women and underrepresented minorities to write op-eds, to empower them to write op-eds, because it's not easy. But if you're a good writer, as Shika is, if you're a good writer and you are passionate about something and you get your facts right, send it to New York Times, the most powerful newspapers, and if it's really good enough, you can really start a cause. So I encourage the people here who, if you have passion, learn about the op-ed project. You can take a class. They will help you get published, your opinions and your passion.
Thanks, Anna. And I want to pivot real quick because I want to highlight a very, very impressive feat that Amanda is taking on. You are transitioning to entrepreneurship. And I know that a lot of people that comes front and center to their mind at some point. Could you just speak to why you made that decision? And then also for other women, what would you advise them that may be unique to their path?
So similar to what Erica said, I just left academic medicine, and I really loved it. I love teaching. I love my residents. I love research. And so that, and I'm not going to totally give it up. I'm still figuring out a way to maybe do all of it. But I was missing having some allyship and support, particularly in my field, which is pretty small. I tried to make it work, but ultimately I decided to go into private practice that's part of a network that has other reproductive endocrinologists. And in fact, I actually just came from the first medical directors conference yesterday evening. And it was so incredible to be around other physicians like myself that I could ask questions about, not just on the science side of things, which was so fun, but also just about like how to run your practice and how to do things in ways that really make your patient feel whole and not just like a number. And so to be able to bounce ideas off of so many other bright physicians, it really excited me. And so I knew that that's what I was looking for. And so it was time to make the jump.
Awesome. And what would you suggest to people that are pursuing this path as well?
I think, being really honest with yourself about what makes you happy, what makes you feel whole. And, it's okay for your initial job or your initial position to not work. That's okay, right? I think we sometimes get so committed to things. We all know those lifers who went to the medical school and did the residency and were the chief and then they stayed for decades. And those are the people that teach us as physicians, right? And so we often think that's how it's supposed to be. But it's not, and it's okay to grow and evolve and change. And so I think if something is really bothering you, it's not a good fit, start to explore. It's not wrong.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So I want to do a quick round robin. So pretend you have President Biden, Jill Biden right here in the room. You want them to focus on one thing specifically. You get 1 minute, and you have to be able to sell your point, tell them that this is the priority. It could be local, it could be national. What would you start with? And I'll start with you, Anna.
Thanks a lot. By the way, this was not in the program.
I cheated.
Oh, there's so many things. But what really bothers me is the migration, the immigrant issue. I'm an immigrant. I'm a legal immigrant. But I am really unsure about how to manage the immigration issue. I know that there's many sides of this. These people are immigrating to the land of opportunity. That's what my mother, who came to the United States in 1968, told us. She left us 4 kids in the Philippines, and she said, I'm going to the land of opportunity because I think it will be better for our family. And that's what these people are doing. So I get it. My husband has become more conservative, and he listens to all the TV stations, but he also listens to Fox. And he understands the other side of why we can't let these illegal immigrants into the United States. But I always tell them, it's like, honey, I'm an immigrant and I wanted to be in the United States. And I was fortunate that my mother was a professional, but not everyone is fortunate. So we need these people. We just need to expedite their opportunity to be able to work here in the United States. So please find a way to make these people who want to be here work in a way that's legal and that they can pay taxes and they can be productive citizens of the United States. I know it's not health related, but that's...
Well, this is people. It is. It's absolutely.
So I would first say thank you, because in a cancer space, there's been a lot of focus, government initiatives, funding, the moonshot that went into effect that over 7 years, I think there was $1.8 billion that were put towards cancer research and funding, and now there's a big push about improving prevention and detection. So I'll start off with thank you, and we need more. And actually, one of the biggest limitations that I find is still that sometimes the decisions are not mine. I know what I want to give my patient. I know their diagnosis. I'm caught up in what insurances will dictate. We touched a little bit about abortions and fertility. One of the things that we also want to see is women who have breast cancer go on to live healthy, long lives, beautiful lives with families if they choose. But I can't get medication to help preserve a woman's fertility after they've gone through cancer treatment. Not a single insurance is going to allow that. I have to fight and get on the phone no matter how many trials and data that I quote, and I'm tired of it. So I would say, President Biden, come spend a day with me in clinic. Come to my clinic. Come. We'll get all the HIPAA papers signed, but I want you to spend a day. I want you to meet these women. I want you to know what medical trauma is, and I want you to know what we have to fight for in order to save lives.
Amen to all of that. I would add two things. I think just to sum it up, let the experts make the decisions about medicine. Yes. Yeah. I don't want a lawyer making my medical decisions. I don't want a policy person who's never touched a patient or cared for a woman. So if you want to come and shadow me in my clinic, by all means, come, please do it, because I think it would change the entire way that we see medicine. So let us, the experts, make the decisions about healthcare. And number two, it goes to your point about insurance. We spend so much of our time doing insurance crap that just does not have anything to do with patient care. We have to figure out a way to desegregate money and capitalism and medicine. And I know that's not a popular opinion for all, but we cannot function and say that health is a human right when we only treat it as, you can only have it if you have access to it and you have money. Like, we're not going to solve the problems of medicine unless we do that. So
there is a bill for that particular
there's
purpose.
Been so many bills. It's just getting people to understand that and vote for it. But those are the two things I would say. Let us make the medical experts make the decisions, and we have to have some sort of universal health care that everyone gets treated equally in medicine.
And regulation on drug costs.
Great. I agree with all of that. We should get 4 minutes with President Biden. Can you arrange that for us? So what I'm going to say is through the lens of, and what I do and thinking about intersectionality, I am incredibly frustrated by the systemic racism that my patients experience and misogyny and so many other things. And so with that in mind, here's what I would say to President Biden. Education, education, education. Please listen to your wife, Dr. Jill Biden, right, who is an expert in education, and invest in education, particularly in history. And the reason I say that is I think a lot of the issues that we have right now are because of a disinvestment in education that started decades ago. And I mean, I remember as an adolescent, and I was so fortunate to have great education out in the suburbs of Chicago. But I remember listening to the news and kind of hearing some of these debates about reducing investment in education in certain states, and because they were going to save money and blah, 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 and taxes. fine, except those children become adults. And those adults who do not know their history will repeat it. And that is why we are seeing a lot of what we are right now when it comes to what's happening in Florida and not talking about slavery or reframing slavery. A lot of the people that are in charge of the legislation probably don't have a good background in it. They don't know what they're talking about. And we don't know how to protect ourselves because we're not well educated about our history. And so I think, of all things, I'm a physician. I love healthcare. I want all the investment. I want the research funds. I want us all to thrive and succeed, but it starts with education. And that is something that we are not going to see the benefits of for a long time. If we invest in our 5-year-olds, I'm expecting when they're 25, 35, 45, and hopefully I'm old and retired in Saint-Tropez, things will be better. That's my dream. But things will be better, but we have to invest in education. So that's what I would ask.
Saint-Tropez, okay. Thank you, guys. Let's give it a round of applause again. We'd like to open it up to a few questions. So if anybody has any questions for the panel, please feel free to step forward.
Hello, my name is Tamika, and I'm a medical scientist in pharma. And I have a question for Dr. Amanda. So I've heard a lot of physicians, or heard about physicians saying that African American women or minority women have a high tolerance for pain. Can you speak to how that actually leads to the mortality of African women in pregnancy?
So the question is, how does the misinformation that women of color, particularly Black women, have a higher tolerance for pain lead to increased maternal mortality? Is that the question? Yeah. Awesome. So I will try to answer that as best as I can and then also expand on that. So, that issue is rooted in racism. Okay, it's rooted in, back in the times of slavery in the U.S., where, there were people who would experiment on slaves in terms of developing the tools that we actually use in obstetrics today. And, part of being able to develop those tools meant having to come up with a story to say, oh, it's okay because she has a higher tolerance for pain. And that is something that has absolutely persisted, unfortunately. I see it in my own practice when I see women that very obviously have endometriosis and have been in pain for years, have somebody just tell them, oh, it's fine. I'll just give you birth control pills. Don't worry about it. But, how it relates specifically to maternal morbidity and mortality, I think it goes back to people not being listened to people that are pregnant not having their voices heard. And I really love what I guess your group is doing in terms of educating women about saying, I have chest pain. That was it just really clicked in my mind, because even if they're maybe experiencing chest discomfort or chest anything else, if you say, I am having pain, it's going to force that physician or provider in front of you to address it. And so I think a lot of times the reason women's pain is being dismissed, particularly Black women's, has a historical root to it. And absolutely it has an effect in terms of women not being listened to and their disease becoming more complicated or worse before they do get the medical care that they need.
Can I put a plug in for an amazing artist in this? I'm wearing earrings by her, Michelle Bowden. She is an artist in the South who essentially, there's 3 women who we know through historical context that were enslaved women that were experimented on to get what Amanda was talking about, one of the retractors that we use for urogynecologic surgery, so fistula repairs. For years and years and years, this went documented. We have historical evidence and records of it. And so essentially, yes, they were experimented on without anesthesia because of this idea that they were not seen as human. And that's the bottom line, is they were not seen as human. They're different. They were other. And that help rationalize in their brain why you could do something so awful to another human being. So anyways, the plug is for this amazing artist. I'm wearing her earrings. Her name is Michelle Bowden. She resurrected this whole sanctuary to honor these 3 women that were Lucy, Anarcha, and Betsy. I'm wearing Lucy's earrings today. I encourage everybody to look it up. It's an amazing space. And she talks a lot about the history and kind of, we are now in gynecology reckoning with that history, teaching our medical students, our residents, not to call it the Sims retractor, who is the guy who experimented on all of these women. we're calling it the Lucy retractor now. So the little things like that, taking away statues that are making these guys seem like grandiose people that actually experimented on other human beings. And so I think it's just so important to say that and honor it and lift up the people that are retelling the story the right way.
Any other questions for Dr.
So I want to highlight a couple of things that, as I understand, related to fertility. For patients, young women who come down or are diagnosed with cancer, they have a short window to make a decision. And I think that's really important to stress. And then secondly, for those that come to you, those 40X patients, you take care of them. But if they go back to their home and some complication arises, then there's some liability that puts you in jeopardy potentially. And, the whole notion of data records and access becomes kind of a whole conundrum. So I wanted to kind of highlight that. But secondly, I was fortunate enough to lead a panel on medical gaslighting. And our own Shika Jane was part of the esteemed panel. And she highlighted some really disturbing stories. And I thought it's really important that you share your examples or experiences as it relates to that. This is twofold, right? It's for you as a professional, as a woman physician, but also your patients and what they experience. And it has to do with cultural competency and all of those things involved in health equity and the social determinants of health that I think are principal to the game change that we need.
The diagnosis of cancer in pregnancy is a very difficult one, mainly because a lot of the therapies that we can use, and there's definitely an underlying premise. Women who are pregnant have to be treated as if they were not pregnant. We have to think about how we're going to give them therapies. Is surgery appropriate at this time? But it's that first trimester that's very difficult because a lot of the therapies are extremely teratogenic and can have disastrous outcomes with regards to just simple organogenesis and if a fetus would even be able to live to term. But if we wait, so every month that a woman delays her cancer care, you increase her mortality by 13%. It just keeps going up. So we have to make fast decisions. We have to get them into our OB providers, and we have to have really difficult but so necessary conversations. Looking at all cancer diagnoses, anywhere depending on the diagnosis, 9 to 28% of women will elect in the first trimester for an abortion, and they need to have that right. No one should make that decision except for them and their provider.
I have a quick question. This goes to all of you because I'm really curious your perspective on this. The battle between the man and the woman when it comes to abortion, and maybe what you've seen. And I don't know if you can kind of give your personal thoughts on a situation like that where it is between the mom and the baby. There's a cancer or they're sick. What are some of the laws or things we should be looking out for when it comes to the woman's choice versus the man? Because technically it's both, right? But is that an argument that's happening right now? Is it a choice? What does that look like when it comes to you guys' space?
Great question. It's her body. That's it. That's there's no other. They can talk about it I see it all the time. When I have a counseling session for a patient that's seeking abortion care for whatever the reason, a lot of times there's a supportive partner there with them, and that's great, right? It's a helpful thing to have, but ultimately the person with the uterus is the one that's going to be the impacted one, and so they have to make that decision, and it's up to them how much they want to let the other person in their life dictate what they do. But there's no law in Illinois or anywhere that I'm aware of right now, except for Georgia, which counts an embryo as a fetus, where there's a parental right for both. So it's ultimately where abortion is allowed, it's up to the person who is pregnant. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Okay, just piggybacking off of that question actually from Amber, what are you saying and hearing, and how can we all support our colleagues and our women in medicine community in other states? For example, Ohio, we all know the story of, of Caitlin Bernard, but also we're seeing a lot of numbers out of Texas. We're hearing a lot of challenges in medicine with a ripple impact to every one of us. And what can we do as an organization, and what kind of stories are you hearing that you think need to get out there louder?
This is like near and dear to my heart. So Caitlin Bernard's one of my dear friends, and for those who don't know the story, she cared for a 10-year-old girl who was raped, provided her abortion care at early gestation. She spoke to a reporter, generally speaking, about the patient, not the person, but the idea of taking care of somebody in Indiana, because she couldn't get that care in her home state. That blew up into this whole media frenzy where the Attorney General of Indiana essentially accused her of violating HIPAA laws, which she did not. And ultimately, she went through a years-plus long process of a lot of trauma, medical trauma, to deal with all of these accusations, and ultimately had to pay a fine. She's still practicing, and she's an amazing, wonderful human and doctor. But you can imagine, after going through something like that, you might not want to practice medicine anymore. And I remember having conversations with her and colleagues like her in states like Texas, even before Dobbs, when SB 8 happened many moons ago. It feels like now, where basically abortion was illegalized in the state of Texas before the Dobbs decision. Having to make the gut-wrenching decision: do I stay and work in the community that I love? They're my family, they're my friends, they're my patients, and continue to do whatever I possibly can do, or do I move to do the job that I was trained to do? And it's honestly it gives me chills thinking about it, that moral injury, and thinking about how do we support my colleagues in states where they can't do the job that they were trained to do. It's a huge question. A lot of people are making the decision to move or travel to provide abortion care. And again, it comes back to this idea that this is not sustainable. Like what we're doing right now, we can't continue like this. And so we really need to get out of this mindset of state by state, it's not okay to have half of our country have access and half not. It's just not going to work. How do we support those colleagues is just hear them and listen to them and say, I don't know, other than that, to recognize that you have been through trauma and you're just doing your job. So I think women in medicine, to answer your question directly, can have some more folks from out of Illinois and talk about their experiences, because I'm fortunate here to be able to do my job, but so many of my friends are not.
That's a great answer to a really hard question. And I think with that, we're going to wrap up our question and answer portion of this amazing panel. So let's just clap and applause. And I just truly want to thank all of you for being here, and for, I think this type of panel, bringing together multiple specialties across different experiences. This is the core of women in medicine. This is what we do. And some of us live in Illinois, but it's a national and actually an international nonprofit organization with representation from everywhere. And we are growing. And, if anyone here is moved, and I imagine everyone is feeling a little bit more emboldened and empowered to really speak about what we're doing, and, to connect with whoever's in your network that we might not know. We want you to speak on our behalf and tell people what you learned here. And, I want to also maybe give you a plug to come to some of our other events we have scheduled in 2024. You saw the timeline, but just a refresher, we're going to do a trivia night, a lip sync battle, karaoke, rooftop events. We have another expert panel. And of course, our September annual summit, which is downtown in Chicago in September. It is a must-attend event for anyone in this space I'm really, I encourage everyone to come. And with that, I'm going to pivot to Robin to talk a little bit more about another way to get involved.
Good job. There's the council. Really want people to get involved. Hope you guys feel really charged and motivated about the mission, the great work that the organization is doing, the great work that we hear about that the panelists are doing. We need your help. There's a sign-up sheet outside. Please come find me. We also want people to raise their hands to chair committees for events. There's tons of work that still needs to be done, and we need as much help as we can get. and donations too. There's a QR code. You'd love those as well. So please, please, please come find me. I'm happy to answer any other questions. Eve will answer questions. Sugar's always around, and she can speak way better than I could ever about all the great work that the organization is doing, but we really, really do need your help, and we appreciate everyone coming out and supporting us.
And a plug for our students who are here as well. And they can take donations. They can help lead you towards us. However you can help would be great. Our mission is a lot of work. It takes a village. Welcome to our village. And please share what you can with us. And I also just really want to thank our sponsors. I don't want to forget everyone because I'm still kind of wrapped up in this awesome panel, so I'm going to use my papers. But to Tinja Anderson, to Robin Malone, thank you. And of course to Angie Moore from Detox Products for your support, to LuluLemon for giving us this amazing space and opportunity. There will be, if you purchase something at LuluLemon today, there's a card you'll get as a gift, as part of the gift. LuluLemon's here. Can you come here? Yay!
Thank you all so much for coming. I want to be able to explain a really special gift that we want to give you all. Very honored to have all of these amazing people and women in our space. And as you can tell, this is not a regular retail space. You're like, we're going to LuluLemon, we're going to talk on the floor. We've got workout studios. We have a meditation studio that I really encourage you to check out. I think there might be a class ending at that point as well. And then obviously all of the inventory that you can ask for. We're the largest LuluLemon in the world as of right now. The first experiential store, also a cafe. So yeah, as a gift for you all coming to this event, we want to give you a gift with purchase. If you plan on shopping today, you're going to grab a little blue ticket outside of the door when you exit. And as long as you spend $50 at the store, doesn't matter what you buy, LuluLemon branded, then you can pick out something $50 or less as a gift with purchase. So that's a belt
I just bought
bag.
this sweater.
Well, there you go. So now you can pick out some socks, underwear, a belt bag. There's some bras or some shirts that are under $50. So grab anybody with a red belt bag if you have any questions. I will also be on the floor, but please take advantage of it. It's a one day today for attending the event, and we're really happy that you all were able to share it with us.
Got it. Thank you. Also, just a plug for this, the book that you are all holding is is our first published book. It's a compilation of articles and blog posts written by Women in Medicine members, students, and it's wonderful. We encourage you to take a look at it. There's a special part at the end written by Shika's daughter. So it's really a special book for us in our first, and it's a gift to you from us for being here and lending us your time. Okay, we're good.